You mentioned a lot of your previous work in DEI, and I feel like there's this, and this is what I want you to sort of dispel or explain. Diversity, equity, inclusion was bringing more people in, right? And then the Civil Rights Division protects people who fit into a lot of those protected classes. So where's the line between DEI, which is I openly, like you look at, you mentioned these universities, right? Even government, we're going to bring people in who fit into these protected classes. But where's the line between protecting them and me? Hey, I'm a white guy. Where are my civil rights that I get to equally compete for certain things?
Yeah, well, so I'm happy to tell you, Sean, that as a white guy, you too have civil rights in the United States. And
really?
For the first time, perhaps, yes, this Department of Justice is protecting your civil rights because,
thank you.
But they're really kind of two separate things. First of all, I'm a big believer in our federal civil rights laws. I grew up in the Deep South in the 1970s, and the vestiges of segregation were still there. And as a woman in the workplace, I've experienced, discrimination and harassment. So that's an issue that occurs. And there are discrimination today against veterans, against our serving military, against people who are gay. We protect all of these categories vigorously in this Civil Rights Division. So let's just say that our belief system is everyone should have an equal opportunity and no special quotas or privileges. But if you're discriminated against on a protected characteristic, we will protect you. But we don't assume that you're going to be discriminated against. We need to see the evidence. Now, the DEI is actually a system of discrimination in itself. It's a zero-sum game where there are winners and losers, and the government decides who are the winners and losers, and corporations under pressure from pressure groups decide that. I just had an exchange with a very good friend of mine this morning who said he resigned from a charity board. He's a CEO, big executive, resigned from a charity board because the charity board was requiring him to fill out his racial and ethnic background because apparently some grant-making institutions are still making grants on the basis of how diverse a board is. And he said he found that offensive and he quit. And I'm going to actually potentially be referring that or looking into that. But, ultimately people do have private choices, but to the extent to which they're regulated by or receive federal funding, they can't engage in discrimination like that anymore in 2025. There's been a succession of Supreme Court precedents that clearly guide the way. One of those is Students for Fair Admissions in 2023, where the Supreme Court said that Harvard and public institutions like UNC Chapel Hill could not discriminate on the basis of race and use these quotas. Another is just this year during the Trump administration, Ames versus Ohio says that white men do not have a higher burden of proof than others in the employment setting. And so that's the current law, and that's the law that we're applying here in the Civil Rights Division. And it is different. And I'm telling you, a lot of people here quit because when we told them this is the job now, everyone gets protected, not just some. Some lawyers here just blew their mind and their worldview to the point where they just couldn't do it. And so, look, and we're not going to be able to eradicate everything overnight. We're certainly working on it. Any institution that receives federal funding has to comply with federal law. And so I work together closely with the Department of Education, HHS, Department of Defense, and other agencies to target grant recipients that are discriminating on that basis. And so there's just a lot of work to be done. If I had 1,000 lawyers here at the Civil Rights Division, I could not eradicate all of it in the 4-year term. But hopefully, that work will continue properly staffed in the next administration as well.
That's right. We'll keep it going. But you're getting the ball rolling and right-sizing this. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially in the wake of this whole Jimmy Kimmel stuff, about hate speech, protected speech, censorship. Does that ever cross the line into someone's civil rights? Is my ability to express myself cross that line into my civil rights being violated if I'm not allowed to speak? Or in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, he put out a statement yesterday or in his monologue where he said last night, I have a right to do this. And I was like, or it's in America, it's illegal to whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not. You have a right to say it, but you also have a right to face the consequences because I have a right to protest you.
Yeah, look, I mean, this again, this is a kind of a complicated area, but first of all, hate speech is not something that the government has anything to do with. People engage in hateful speech, and that's protected by the Constitution. Secondly, you don't have absolute free speech in the workplace. This should be obvious to anyone who's ever had a job, and it's obvious to Jimmy Kimmel. Third, I can guarantee you, without having seen Jimmy Kimmel's contract, that it has certain clauses in there that include that if he engages in conduct or speech that reflects poorly on the employer or is at odds with the business goals of the employer, they have a right to terminate or suspend or otherwise take action against him for that. And fourth, the United States Supreme Court has said, and the First Amendment only applies where a government is taking action against you. So it is the right of government. I'm a government official. I can have my opinion out there. That doesn't mean I'm taking action against Jimmy Kimmel, which, by the way, I don't think I've ever watched his show. I didn't watch his goofy apology. I've only read about it online. But he didn't even apologize, apparently.
That's
but anyway,
right. I was going to say, good call. Good catch. Good catch.
Yeah. His whatever, mea culpa, feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for people who themselves have done some fairly disgusting things in the name of comedy. And so anyway, that's just my personal opinion. But you don't have that right. You have the right to say your dumb things in a public setting. You can say it in, Lincoln Park. You can say it, on different public spaces. You can't say it on your employer's broadcast if the employer doesn't accept that is consistent with their goals. And you can't say it necessarily in a regulated space like one of those broadcast networks. And so one may or may not like the way the whole situation has evolved. But to your point earlier about consequences, it is way past time for consequences to arrive for people who have just been, thinking that different rules apply to them. Different rules do not apply. And you look at Roseanne Barr, you look at Megyn Kelly, and you look at other people who have been in the public sphere and been canceled for their, Gina Carano, canceled for their views. I didn't see a lot of heroism from certain quarters to stand up for them. In fact, I think I saw none. So, yeah.
Sorry to jump in on this video, but if you're thinking about a great dinner, I've got the perfect solution for you. Riverbend Ranch Steaks. They are absolutely amazing. You cannot get these in grocery stores. And frankly, they're better than anything you can get in a steakhouse. Go to riverbendranch.com. Use code Sean for $20 off your first order. riverbendranch.com. For your first order, use code Sean. And by the way, the hot dogs, the beef jerky, everything else is phenomenal. From the ranch to your table, riverbendranch.com. Use code Sean. One area that you guys are involved in the Civil Rights Division that I know you've posted about that I didn't realize, you guys have gotten a lot of wins for the Second Amendment. Explain where that, I was shocked when I was going through your website and some of the statements at how you guys are protecting Second Amendment rights.
Well, this is something that we're gearing up here to have hopefully soon an announcement on sort of a formal aspect of it. But I'm personally passionate about Second Amendment rights, and so are many of our leaders in this government. And the Second Amendment conveys certain civil rights. I would even go so far as to say it codifies a natural right of self-defense. And so when you see, in the wake of successive Supreme Court precedents, including Heller involving DC and the ability to even own a handgun here, to the Bruin case involving the right to be able to, for a lawful, law-abiding person to be able to bear arms that are legal and not unusual or, sort of unusually dangerous, then you're seeing states all over the country simply ignore those Supreme Court precedents. For example, where I used to live in California, I never even bothered to apply for a concealed carry permit in San Francisco because nobody ever got them unless they were a United States senator. Dianne Feinstein, I think, was like the last one to get one like 30 years ago or something, before that Bruin decision came out. And today we are taking action against jurisdictions that are violating those federal civil rights by slow walking the permits, by banning entire categories of arms that we believe are lawful. It was my tremendous privilege on earlier this week, to go to Chicago, and I think for the first time ever, to have a Senate-confirmed member of the Department of Justice stand up in court to defend the Second Amendment. And in that case, I was arguing the government's brief, which I and other colleagues here signed, that said that Illinois' so-called assault weapons ban that bans as many as 1,000 different firearms and attachments is unconstitutional. It is overly restrictive. It is at odds with the Supreme Court precedent. The Seventh Circuit made up its own weird test that is inconsistent with the Second Amendment. And so I urged the court to apply what the district court did, which is largely strike down that law with very few exceptions. And so we actually filed a similar brief in the Third Circuit, which I'm looking forward to arguing as well. And that takes aim at New Jersey's so-called assault weapons ban. And by the way, it's not just the weapons, it's also a number of attachments that we believe are lawful and necessary to enjoy all legal uses of these lawfully permitted arms, including defense, public defense, sporting, and the like. And so there's a lot more cases in the pipeline, and it's actually really exciting. I'm a firearms owner, and I think it is important to be able to enjoy that right if you want.
What a sea change. I thank you for doing, I mean, like, honestly, like, all this stuff is, I never thought I'd get excited about the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ. Harmeet Dhillon getting me
I'm wounded by that, Sean. I'm really wounded.
No. I'm actually saying it took a champion like you. I mean, I never thought that my Second Amendment rights were civil rights. I never realized what you were doing so kudos to, my God, what a sea change at DOJ. Thank you for that. One last question, if you can. The president signed this. You brought up Antifa a second ago. The media is saying, oh, well, Antifa is this amorphous group, and this is a ridiculous thing. You mentioned them a moment ago, and I just want to get a quick take from you. Like, are we able to go after Antifa? Are you able? Because I do a show.
So what the media is saying, the poorly informed media is saying, is completely false. I'm one of the few lawyers in the United States who's ever actually litigated against an Antifa group and spent years representing journalist Andy Ngo, who was violently assaulted by an organized mob on multiple occasions for doing journalism. I'm going to talk about, a fundamental breach of the public trust that is attacking journalists for trying to uncover the truth. What I learned about Antifa, which Andy, by the way, if anyone's interested in Antifa, should follow him, his blog, and just the amount of knowledge this man has is incredible. Antifa is a shadowy terrorist type organization. It is organized in cells. People are kept separated, and information is managed from a military type command and control. Their leaders keep themselves in very low profile. They go about masked. They have leaders who travel from city to city. I sued one of those and tried to serve them. You can imagine how difficult it is to serve civil process on organized, terrorists. And we rose to that challenge. We served some of them. We didn't serve some of them. We got default judgments against some of them. We didn't get judgments against some of them. But the point is, we took it on. And I took it on as a civil lawyer with very limited resources with my nonprofit, the Center for American Liberty. So now with the resources of the federal government, the FBI, and our federal law enforcement, we can and we must treat Antifa as the public threat that it is. It is no less of a threat than narco terrorists and cartels and organized crime mobs and mob families and drug smugglers and all of the like. It is extremely violent, concerning, and frankly effective at terrorizing people in major cities. And it's about time that we did something about it. This is the president to do it. This is the DOJ to do it. The Attorney General is very determined on the law enforcement front and every front, frankly. And I think that we're going to see some changes here in this country. But you have to understand that Antifa's sort of mentality and organizing principles actually come from Europe. There's been this type of political violence in Europe, Black Bloc and attacking governments for years, and they've replicated it here with some funding from somewhere. I mean, when people assaulted Andy, they were wearing a uniform of hardened tactical military grade gloves and other weapons. They had weapons issued to them. So this isn't some ragtag, disaffected group of hippies who are having a bad trip. It is really scary and serious, and we need to take it as such, and we are for the first time.
See, I'm getting even more excited now. I need like a T-shirt that says DOJ Civil Rights Division, let's go. I mean, I don't know. I'll see if they have those at the carts down on like 14th. And so I'll let you know. And if we don't, I may have to make them up. I'll send you one. But Harmeet Dhillon, thank you for being so generous with your time, but more importantly, for what you're doing for our country. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
You bet. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.